improve that. So, Michelle, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Honorable Minister. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure for us at KfW Development Bank to participate in this Transport Day, and especially to highlight and underline the importance that we assign to the Hamburg Charter for Inclusive and Just Mobility, where Jochen has already set the scene and explained the important content. Here we are working together with many high-ranking representatives and experts from all over the world to take the issue of inclusive and just mobility forward under the overall goals, of course, also of the COP29. KfW, as the German bilateral development bank, has long-standing experience in financing mobility. The approvals in 2023, the impacts that they will be having amount to 500,000 tons carbon reduction in our partner countries. And we feel that the Charter will allow us to take our work in our partner countries with our partners a step forward. So what does it actually mean for our work? The 8 principles are manifold and they're very broad, and we feel that in some areas we still have challenges that we are facing and that we will be addressing in our work. Just to give you some examples, we are currently carrying out studies on inclusive transportation in order to inform our partners and ourselves what needs to be done in order to sort of cover this comprehensively in our project concepts. Fair and dignified jobs and climate-friendly mobility industries and businesses are a priority, of course, of our partner countries, and we are working on ways of how this can be addressed more concretely in our work. Empowered and integrated popular transport, such as it was just mentioned, informal transport sector, are being taken more and more into consideration when we are preparing our projects. So it's taken into consideration in the analysis that we undertake in order to find out what are the right concepts and what are the right structures for the projects. So these are the areas where we feel that we still need to get better, that we still need to increase our analysis, where we need to work. There are, of course, also some areas where we feel that we are already on the right track and where we have project concepts with our partners that we feel are going in the right direction. For example, providing access as defined in SDG 11.2 also mentioned to safe, affordable, accessible, and sustainable transport systems, including gender. We have a project in Bangalore, the new metro project in India, which is specifically addressing these issues. Addressing the challenges resulting from climate change in Tunis, in North Africa. By investing in safe and attractive climate-resilient public transportation, we are supporting the rail infrastructure, which includes also walking and cycling modes. And a last example, advocating the integration of electric mobility into public and shared transportation systems to maximize efficiency and accelerate renewable energy. We have a project together with in Tirana, Albania, which is the electric bus rapid transit system. So we feel that the Charter will allow our partner countries and us to focus more concretely on these relevant issues and to push these principles forward. As we are feeling that a growing number of mobility projects are supporting the zero emission goal and focusing more concretely on this. So we're very much looking forward to working together with everybody who has already joined the Charter or will still join the Charter in the future, hopefully. Having an intensive dialogue, sharing experience, and as it was mentioned by Jochen, joining forces and taking these principles forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle. And are there any questions? any observations? Very, very clear. So, unfortunately, I wanted to have views on the panel later on climate finance, but you're obviously very busy. And
to be talking about the avoidance shift breakthrough that is being launched by the high-level climate champions team. I am Joo Hyun Ha. So you did a pretty good job on the pronunciation. I don't expect people to be fully fluent in Korean, but as Holger mentioned, I am land transport specialist with the Climate Champions team. I'll take comment from the International Union of Railways, where I lead the advocacy work. So happy to be here today. So just to give you a little bit of context, because I understand that sometimes all these acronyms, all these big names, they can be a bit confusing. So who are the high-level climate champions team? We are the body responsible for mobilizing non-state actor ambition to support the Paris Agreement. And we do that in support of the high-level climate champions. So I myself am yeah, technology. 2024 and still have the same problems, but anyways. Yeah, so I am not the high-level climate champions, but I do work in the team, and we support them on their mandate to bring together the community to support countries in this mission to take us towards the Paris Agreement. So these are the two climate champions. Razan Al-Mubarak, who was appointed by the COP29 presidency of UAE. This is her last week as high-level climate champion, and but we have alongside of her Nigar Padarai, who is the appointed champion from the COP29 presidency in Azerbaijan. And yeah, I just wanted to give you a couple of examples of the work that we do. I'm sure that you have seen some of these logos, some of these products that you see on the screen. I'm not going to go into detail on them, but just to say that all of them are delivered by the high-level climate champions team. And we work, just to mention that we also work in close collaboration with the MPGCA, which is the Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action. The Marrakesh Partnership for Global Climate Action, who is within the UNFCCC body responsible for bringing this message from non-state actors. So I mentioned the avoidance shift breakthrough that we are launching, and again, what is the 2030 avoidance shift breakthrough? So the breakthroughs are simple common goals that are put together as targets for the sector to bring together this community of non-state actors from all different areas. So we're talking about policy, finance, businesses, technologists, suppliers, and civil society. And they can take different forms and in different areas. So here is a list of all of the areas in which we have breakthroughs. So it goes through human settlements, energy industry, land, ocean coastal zones, water transport, and carbon removals. Apologies. And if you look at the screen, you can see that all the 2030 targets that we have for the transport sector. As you can see highlighted in yellow, that's the one on avoidance shift, and it says target in development, and that's because that target didn't exist up until this year. And we push for this in the understanding that all the others on road transport were addressing more the point around electrification, which is so important to take us to the decarbonized transport that we need.
but there is potential from investing in avoidance shift measures. And so we wanted to fill that gap through a breakthrough. And so we started working with the community early in the year, and this is part of the reason why I'm seconded to the high-level climate champions team, to think about what is this target that can bring all of us together to support avoidance shift measures. And so when this dialogue started, we thought, actually there is good work being done by the community that was led by SLOCAT in the last year, and that many of the organizations that are here supported on the call to action to double the share of energy efficient and fossil free forms of land transport for people and goods by 2030. And so we thought, no need to reinvent the wheel here. We have already a really good call to action, something that is already supported by actually two countries, Colombia and Chile, and also many other organizations working in this space. So we didn't want to fill up this space with even more targets, but rather use our role as our convening power for this community to enhance the great work that is already being done. So what it looks like is that the call to action has been a lot of it has been used to support the avoidance shift breakthrough. All of the elements are there. All the action areas have been distributed across the 5 levers of change, which is how we distinguish the different types of stakeholders that we work with. And this is already in the High Level Climate Champions team website, so you can go there and access it, read a little bit more about it. But you will see a few changes, but the main body of the work is there. And I just wanted to also mention, why is it important? Why is it relevant that we do this now at COP29, since we are all here for this event? I just wanted to remind us all of the first global stocktake that acknowledged transport for the first time, calling parties to accelerate the reduction of emissions from road transport in a range of pathways. So that's where our avoidance shift target comes in. It's this range of pathways that we're talking about. And so we also understand that this is a crucial window of opportunity for influencing the process of updating of the nationally determined contributions, the NDCs. There's a lot of conversations around, what's going to be in these NDCs 3.0, and we wanted to also highlight the great work that the community has done around NDC templates. So these are sectoral templates that have been developed to support countries or provide guidance to countries into improving their targets around transport in NDCs. And you can see a few examples of them in the screen. There is one on walking and cycling, on rail, which is done by USC, the organization that I work with, so I'll make the disclaimer there. Public transport, and also one for popular transport. And I also wanted to mention that all of these elements are incorporated into 2 very important partner projects, which is the one on the International Transport Forum, Guide to Integrating Transport into NDCs. So that is a guide that has been put together by the ITF as a product for countries, for their member countries to be able to use when thinking about of how they can contribute to the NDC process. And they're also all available at the SLOCAT Partnership NDC Library. So I invite you all to check all these materials out, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But I think that's it from my end. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And so for all of you who's advertising our third session, where we will have diving deeper into some different guidance and templates. So thanks a lot. We're running a little bit out of time for this session. But is there any urgent question now? So she will be person around. Okay, but please, keep your statement or questions short. Thank you.
Hi. Thanks so much for the presentation. I saw in your slide about the levers of change, and as part of the stakeholders, workers are always the ones impacted and affected by these changes, this transition. And I just want to know, are workers part of the conversations? Are you having conversations with workers in terms of the growth? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely happy to. One of the levers of change that we're talking about is civil society, so absolutely important for us to involve workers as well, because not only do we want this transformation to happen in the transport system as a whole, it has to include, it has to be a just transition, obviously. So this is how I see it is a building block for work to be done in the future. So I'm happy to also connect and sort of build that dialogue together moving forward.
Wonderful. Thank you so much again. And with that, you can clap. I'd like to move us to Maruxa Cardama. I didn't see you actually meet me. There's an introduction. So she's the Secretary General from the Partnership for Sustainable Carbon Transport, SLOCAT, and she has been involved in the international global arena with different senior positions over the last 2 decades. So, Maruxa, give us a little bit of your setting the scene.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to see everyone, and of course, thanks a lot to the Climate Compatible Growth Forum, Mark, Julia, bringing us here together, and thanks for the partnership and the company recognition. Special thanks to Holger. I know that he's the one pulling the entire weight of these and bringing us together. So, pleasure to be here with you today. And what I wanted to do, so I've been given that phenomenal, very sexy topic of taking you a bit through the challenges and the opportunities of the global processes, which sounds very dry. So I'm going to try to concentrate it upon 5 opportunities, and of course the challenges that go with it. But I think that you've made the way lovely, for me. You're allowing me to take a lot of what you've previously presented. Because the first opportunity I wanted to put up there is precisely the way in which COP29 ended with that decision, the first global stocktake, that was encouraging countries to work on reducing road emissions through a range of pathways, including through electrification. But not only that, we also saw countries coming together, pledging to improve energy efficiency and to triple the capacity of a renewable energy production. And we obviously also saw countries agreeing to a 3rd round of national contributions to be submitted at some point February 2025, if not before COP30. So this time next year, let's say, as a maximum deadline. So, of course, that is great news in the sense that perhaps at the beginning of COP28 we were not expecting such language in an official decision coming out of the global stocktake. But the fact is that we are here at COP29 and we have seen that in the first week the negotiations on how to implement that decision of global stocktake are really very stuck. They're not getting anywhere. And that can send a bad signal as countries need to start drafting, if they haven't done it yet, start drafting the next national carbon contributions. And of course that is the space that we have to watch. And based on the good news though, we still do know that there's a few challenges, isn't it? We shouldn't be taking for granted that because there is a next round of NDCs, the transport ministries are going to be involved in it. The way in which transport ministries are involved in the official national process of putting together an NDC is very asymmetric and it's not automatic because they are not the ministries that holding the elaboration of those national contributions. So as a global international community, it's really our opportunity to support transport ministries in understanding what this process is all about, and also the other ministries in understanding why do they need to engage the transport ministries in order to deliver the entirety of the mandate for the next day, the carbon contributions. Besides that, of course, what we also know, and we have noticed over the years with the first round of NDCs and the second round of NDCs, is that those NDCs are not always capturing what countries are already doing at the national level on transport. There is a gap in alignment. This next round of NDCs is the opportunity for us to work with countries to make sure that everything they are doing at home on transport is captured in a relevant manner in the NDCs they go to. And it's not just on electrification, it's got to be on that range of pathways, and it's got to be also on freight and on passenger transport, because we see how the NDCs tend to focus quite a lot on passenger transport to the detriment of focusing on freight. So, first thing for us, of course, is to start raising awareness, if we haven't done it yet, on what does it mean to implement the reduction of road emissions through a range of pathways. That is a rather important action for us as a global community. We have seen already good initiatives doing that. For instance, you have just presented to us the Avoid and Shift breakthrough, which is great news. We also know that the COP29 presidency on Wednesday is launching the multi-sectorial actions pathway for cities, which is containing a very clear call to cities to work on a similar approach that the Avoid and Shift breakthrough has got there. Of course, SLOCAT is very happy and very proud to see that. It's very in line with the call to action that we launched for the planners last year that you mentioned. But of course, this will not be completed if we didn't work with our countries, particularly with low and middle income countries, in supporting them in identifying what is the state of play of their transport systems and what are those decarbonization pathways that they can put in motion to capture the emissions. The next session is very much about that, so I'm not going to go into it, but it's a very important point. The second opportunity relates to what countries agreed in COP28 about transitioning away from fossil fuels and the pledge about improving energy efficiency and improving and increasing the amount of production of renewable energies. Great news. What is the challenge? The challenge is that those conversations over the past year have not been broken down on thematic areas. Transport is not in the picture, let's say, of those conversations. And it's not banal, because at the end of the day, transport is the fastest growing energy consuming sector, 2% increase every year, and we are highly dependent on fossil fuels, as we know. We only have about 4% of renewables consumed by the transport sector. So if we are not going to mix these conversations about improving energy efficiency and tripling the capacity of renewables with those sectors who need to start reducing their energy consumption or buying more renewables, we are really not going to get where we need to get on that pledge that countries need. Another big point, if you want, of what we have seen over the past year is that as transport specialists, you know well that land use, energy sources and infrastructure do shape transport demand and transport supply, and are going to be essential. A combination of those two factors if we really are going to transform our transport systems, whether it is in the so-called global north or in the so-called global south. However, those aspects are also absent in the conversations that we have had in the past year coming out of COP28. So what is it a bit that we could be doing here? There are spaces like the Clean Energy Ministerial, where we have seen these conversations about the pledge agreed at COP28 taking shape. We have to infiltrate as a community a bit those spaces and send committed ministers, honourable minister, message to you to engage as well in these other spaces and bring these conversations of energy and transport together. Another thing that actually could be quite important for us as a global transport community to influence coming forward over the next months is the type of targets around transport electrification and renewables mandates that we're going to see in the next round of NDCs. Up to the second generation of NDCs, out of the 74 NDCs talking about transport electrification, only 17 had something on renewable energies. That is telling us that despite the increase of electrification in transport that we've seen over the past years, that is not entailing an immediate correlation of an increased use of renewables in the transport sector. So if the next NDCs are not going to have targets that couple both electrification and renewables use, we're going to miss a bit again the opportunity. The third opportunity that I wanted to share with you, colleagues, is about, well, climate finance COP. It's supposed to be that, isn't it? It's not very much of an opportunity, because we know that the investment gap of the transport sector is the largest amongst any of the sectors, and we know that in order to put systems on a pathway for clean transport and sustainable transport, we need 7 times the current investment. So that is not good news. But what is good news is that at least the international community is discussing this next level of climate finance that is needed internationally, and therefore is our opportunity to put in the radar of those conversations the needs that are coming directly from transport. It's also interesting that this COP is supposed to be the COP that is to be implementing the loss and damage fund that was agreed at COP28. There is an opportunity there to infiltrate those conversations, bringing them to a sectoral lens as well. There is more openness talking about sectors in the loss and damage fund conversations than what there is in the overall conversations about climate finance. As you may have followed over the past days, the negotiations and the conversations on climate finance, the new collective quantified goal are very, very hard. One can expect that conversations on climate finance are probably only going to get harder post-COP, because next year in the framework of the United Nations we have the so-called process on the finance for development, so all that is probably going to get a bit hampered. But it is therefore nevertheless our opportunity to put transport in the radar of these conversations with two clear messages, and you can find them in the messaging that from SLOCAT in collaboration with WRI we put up there for these COP. And those two messages for us is that we need an alignment between the new collective quantified goal and the decision on the global stocktake that came out of COP28. In practical terms, for the transport community, that means that the new collective quantified goal needs to be aligned with the call to countries on reducing the actions for road emissions. We need to see that alignment between what countries are being requested to do on the NDCs and the money that is being put out there in terms of thematic areas. And it also means very practically that we want a transport package within the loss and damage fund. Because at the end of the day, we know that it's a 17 billion losses directly on transport assets that are caused by natural hazards on an annual basis, and we know that it's around 8 billion that are directly on low and middle income countries. That represents the biggest share of GDP compared to the other group of countries. The fourth opportunity I wanted to put out there relates to fossil fuel subsidies. There was a bit of a conversation about it at COP28, as you remember, and the outcome text does contain some language about transitioning away from that and progressively removing them. Space to watch, I think, for us is the Global Solidarity Levies Task Force that was set up by President Motley from Barbados, President Macron from France, and President Ruto from Kenya. They are bringing together three different global processes that you might probably have followed. An initiative on the one hand that is spearheaded by Barbados about the reform of international development and the international financial architecture. There is, of course, President Macron convening in summer 2023 the Paris Summit for a new global financial pact, and then there was the first Africa Climate Summit also in September 2023. So the three presidents that come together have set up this global task force. They've already reunited 13 countries. And perhaps you picked up in the press with some Project Syndicate, for instance, just a couple of weeks ago before COP. They're very clear language. Their assumption is that there are swathes of the economy that are not being taxed, but are actually heavily polluting and damaging the planet. They are putting the finger on aviation, on maritime, fossil fuels, on plastics, on international finance transactions. And they are announcing that at the beginning of next year, they're going to be releasing, let me read from my cheat sheet because otherwise I'm going to get it wrong there. They have been examining the potential of levies across shipping, aviation, fossil fuels, and financial transactions, as well as exploring options like levies on plastics and cryptocurrency. And in early 2025, they will publicly launch a handful of concrete proposals with rigorous impact assessments that will be scalable, raising at least 100 billion per year. And these proposals will be accompanied with clear assessments and potential externalities. They are, for instance, indicating that just a levy on shipping of $100 per ton of carbon dioxide under MIO could raise 80 billion US a year. So I think that our space here is to make sure that while these conversations are happening, this money, repurposing the money that is so far into these kind of subsidies, also ends up in the transformation of transport systems. Of course, there's a ton of things that we need to transform in our economies, but what we don't want, isn't it, is that money to be not hitting the transformation of transport systems. And last but not least, the fifth opportunity that I wanted to put out there, which is a bit tangential to what we are here today for, because we are at COP, it's got to do with all the processes that are going on in the United Nations, and it's the United Nations Decade of Sustainable Transport that will kick off in January 2026 and will run until the end of 35. You are probably wondering, like, yet another decade? Yeah, you're right. There's other decades that have touched upon transport management. For instance, the road safety decade. But this is, if you want, the first time that the United Nations is thinking about a holistic approach to transport through one of these decades. It's got the possibility of being of turbocharging ambition and commitment. It's got the possibility of connecting the conversations about transport with the wider conversations about development, about health, about energy, of course about jobs. It's got therefore the possibility of taking us out a bit of the silo in which we are in the United Nations system and getting the conversations to be wider and more connected. There is a consultation going on right now. The whole process is led by the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs, DESNZ. The consultation is open until the 10th of January. I think it's our opportunity as a global transport community to get involved in that. And very importantly, it's an opportunity to make sure that that dialogue that happens at the United Nations is not a dialogue just for a particular group of countries, but it's really a global dialogue in which all countries can see themselves and trigger that just transition conversation back at home. And it's also an opportunity perhaps for a more coordinated and a punchier impact from the UN system as a whole, from the different entities in the UN system which are working with transport. So basically 2025 is not a banal year. It's really a year in which we have that window of opportunities on the NDCs. And even if transport doesn't make it on an NDC of a country, it's about how do we support countries to implement the NDCs with entry points towards transport, because we know that the demand of transport is a derived demand from many of the things that countries are going to have to tackle in their NDCs. We have as well the opportunity in 2025, of course, to influence the implementation plan of this United Nations decade. And we have the opportunity of seeing how we do replace international development cooperation, regional cooperation as well, for implementing both NDCs and decade. And that always carries an opportunity as well to set different partnerships. So thanks very much for the opportunity. I'm very happy to take any questions. So also during the coffee break, so we catch up with you with that. Thanks, Holger.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Maruxa, for actually giving us a big picture in a few minutes. So we much appreciate it. As you mentioned, really is behind time. So Maruxa will be around until the end of the event. As she will co-host, in fact, there's the receptionist we have at 6 p.m. So for those who are not aware, please just join us till the end. So you deserve more than a drink. With that, I also would like to ask our last speaker, Ibsen from CONCITO. CONCITO is a leading policy think tank based in wonderful Copenhagen, one of the leaders around resistance and mobility. Peter has worked before for the Ministry of Environment as well as climate, also during the time of COP15 in Copenhagen. So CONCITO is ahead, so just presented at COP an important piece around climate finance. So please share some thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for inviting. Yes, I'm coming to at the end of the presentations. I think I will be rather quick, but just make some few special remarks around what is now COP29. So I will try to combine these two things, transport and finance, with some work and make a sneak peek of some work that we are doing also on that issue. This is just presenting a little bit about what the OECD. I will start to send two reports that you might know, but you still might want to recollect what was the main messages. This is the OECD talking about the ODA and climate. On the left side, you have the total ODA, industry, transport, energy, and so on. You can see transport is 7% of the ODA. When you talk about the 100 billion stuff, which is the one we discussed here at the COP, which is climate finance, transport is 13%. And what the OECD is concluding is the climate objective has moved into the center of ODA since 2016. So the Stern summary report was just out saying that we need a lot of more money into annually in for transport as well. This is talk about the next discussion on finance here at the COP, which will, I guess, not conclude, but will be moved forward. We'll talk about a lot of more money needed. The Stormway report talks about our annual climate investments. This is the emerging and developing countries ex-China to $2.4 trillion dollars in all sectors, mitigation and adaptation, and a lot of it going into transport. This is important to keep in mind. It's also important to keep in mind that some of it, and mostly, will be on domestic resource, of course, things that our countries are doing now and are planning, but has to be supported by a lot of other NDPs, bilateral and private sector increase. In Denmark, we are actually not very good at this. I will come back to that. What I can say is going on is that we need to find that better way of supporting transport and other sectors. And that in Denmark, we are at CONCITO, we are working together with the G20 Brazilian presidency, upcoming South African presidency on a thing called the country platforms. The next step of the JP, talking about how can you meet a substantial increase in finance, how can then meet a systemic approach in the countries. That's a new thing that Brazilian and South Africans are working on, I think, could really scale up the investments also in transport. So this is a sneak peek for some work that our expert is working on at the moment and working for UK Aid. It's talking about, this is the trend on infrastructure. It's fairly flat in the investments. This is you remember the 7% of the OECD? That goes merely into road and rails. That's quite a substantial part of it. But we are now looking into what kind of donors are actually using money for transport. What kind of ODA are going into transport? As you can see, Germany, UK, France is doing fine, but Japan is really, really huge on transport on ODA. Our expert is actually now in Japan looking into this. Quite interesting. But the thing is, you can go into this, you cannot see whether there's actually some low emission mitigation initiatives. We don't have the indicators ready yet. You can go into the sustainable, the real markers or the SDG tax. It's not quite clear now what kind of investments are actually going to low emission transport. So, to make it very clear, in terms of infrastructure and transport, we actually need there will be built comparable to a new Berlin every month from now to 2050. It's a huge amount of things being built, being reshaped, and you have to get that done in synergies with other things. You have to think about how can we make compact urban development plans and strategies integrating sustainable mobility options, but also doing other things, universal access, city vulnerable groups, including women, casualties, human health, other issues. How can we make these plans? And then, of course, we have a huge opportunity, as the former speaker also said, that we have the UN Decade of Sustainable Transport coming up. We have to ensure that the ODA can be clearly targeted. There's urban sustainability plans, public active transport, adaptation, and not least electrification. And I can say that we are working a lot in Denmark, small country, but still quite significant on ODA to actually enhance the transport part of it, which has not been at all a priority so far. So this was just getting to link up the finance issue that we are moving on in the COP. I hope we are moving on, otherwise it will be next year. And the transport sector, where we need to do a lot more in the coming years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Christian. We're always running short of microphones. I don't know what thank you. And so I've actually, any questions now? So otherwise, Christian will stay also. Through the coffee break. So thanks again, Erison, for joining us. And with that, I like to ask today, so with followers the UK government, and Peter works for the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero, and with the head of Global Transitions, as well as also the head of the Secretariat of the Breakthrough Agenda. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. And yes, as Holger set out, I work for the UK government, for the UK's Department for Energy, and I lead on global sector transitions, which includes road transport, but also industry and other key the other key sectors that we need to decarbonise to meet the Paris Agreement goals. And the other part of my role is as someone says, is head of the Breakthrough Agenda Secretariat, which is a framework for international collaboration. So it's really great to be here to talk to you about collaboration, and I'd like to sort of give a few reflections on that from my experience through the Breakthrough Agenda and all sectors that are very relevant to the transport sector. But first, I just wanted to focus on finance. Now, I mean, these are stats that I'm sure everyone in the room knows, but the Climate Policy Initiative says that the global spend on transport is $300 billion a year, and $239 billion of that goes to road transport. But where we need that to go is actually 1.9 trillion a year globally on road transport. So that's a six-fold increase. And even more crucially, I think just heard then from the Solway Stern report that in emerging markets and developing economies, we're going to need to see 500 billion to 650 billion of funds for those emerging market developing countries to transition. So I'd like to talk a bit about what we're doing about it, and that brings me on to the roadmap for enabling a transition to zero emission vehicles that was launched by UK Minister earlier last week. And it's actually an update of a report that was first published at COP29, and our intention is to update this annually. This is a product that's led by the ZEZ Transition Council and the Breakthrough Agenda. It's our friends at ICCT do a lot of the heavy lifting, but I know that a lot of organisations that represent this room do contribute to this report. So my first thing was just to say to everyone who has contributed this, thank you. And to those that haven't, please do, because what we see this as is a North Star for us all that kind of brings together all of the support for AMDs, for emerging market companies, to accelerate the transition to zero emission vehicles. And just to sort of emphasise the importance of this being an annual report and being updated every year. So that really it sets the layer of what support is available out there, but also sets targets for and plans for increasing that, and they're then reassessed each year. And one of the updates that we have this year is the addition of a new target, which is around just transition and resilience. So we were just hearing about the importance of that within the transport sector. So that is now within the ZEZ transition roadmap. So, like I say, please do engage with this process going forward. So moving on from finance, I just wanted to share a few reflections on international collaboration more broadly. The first is to have a clear vision, to set goals and targets, the Breakthrough Agenda is something that does that, but the zero emission vehicle sector has been significant in this area with international targets such as the Census Declaration and the MOU on medium and heavy duty vehicles. So that's the first is targets. The second is to build on what is there. So there is also already a lot of collaboration going on in all of the sectors that we need to decarbonise. And it's really important that anything new that comes along really does work with what is there and ideally amplifies what's there rather than duplicates it. The third thing is flexibility. And that is that we need to maintain flexibility to the political context. But a part of that flexibility is certainly on the climate side is that every year we have a new presidency, and they will have their own priorities. And what's really important is that we work with the COPs and help them to understand that a lot of what they want to achieve is already happening out there, and help them to see how they can engage with existing landscape initiatives so that whatever they do, put their weight behind is helpful. The fourth is to agree on the gaps and challenges that we collectively need to work on. And I think this is something that the Breakthrough Agenda is particularly good at. We have an independent annual report that's written by the IEA, an international energy agency, working with the UN Pilot Champions, that provides recommendations for each of the Breakthrough Agenda sectors as to how international collaboration can be improved in that sector. And they're then taken forward by countries as a set of priority actions that are launched at COP. So when our minister was launching the NZ's roadmap, she was also announcing the new set of priority actions for the Breakthrough Agenda, including on road transport breakthrough. I've lost count. I think I'm on number. This is the second to last one. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is number 5. Is that we need to involve the private sector as early as possible. That is really key to the international cooperation as well. And then my final one is that the work should be evidence based, and that's what brings us back to CCG, the climate growth, and the importance of developing that energy base and bringing together the people that we need to work together to have that evidence base. And that's why this programme is supported by the UK government through our foreign office, and similarly our support as well for the HVT, the high volume transport, which is also supported by foreign office money from the UK, and helps with that evidence base. So with that, I will stop there. But thank you again for the rest of the day.
Thank you so much, Peter. And Peter,
I have more copies of this in my bag if anyone would like to take it.
So there are already several hands. So Peter is in fact still. So Peter, you're still here at the coffee break, yeah. So Peter will be there. So then there's more of the printed copies and sensors for that. Final person for the first session actually was there's like a special address, and it's my true honor to have the honorable minister from Burundi, Mr. Kake. Apologies again for his pronunciation. He's a minister for infrastructure, equipment, and social housing. And it's a true honor because he just also was able to make it just yesterday. And you worked also for 2 years also as a minister before, so you worked also leading also the initiatives in Burundi also around also like the freight corridor. And we really are pleased also that you also make your time, and looking forward also your address today. Thank you.
my friend and brother, and good afternoon to all of you. My name is not that hard to pronounce, just say Dieudonné. If you are French speakers and so I wish to first of all take this opportunity to sincerely thank the organizers of this very particular session, and I can see the participation is quite impressive, and thank you for the previous speakers. You really made it, and I think the discussion of this afternoon is going to provide huge input into the ongoing COP discussions. I'm the Minister of Infrastructure, Equipment and Social Housing, covering roads, railway, ports, railway infrastructure, housing, to name but a few. When I was requested to actually provide some keynotes during this conversation, I tried as much as I could to think around, and found at the end of my thinking that almost everything is now known. But the most remaining part, and the big one, is how can we walk the talk? How can we perform the most inclusive businesses? How can we make money while decarbonizing the transport sector? I'm not from the chemistry background. I did mathematics, I did economics, so I may be lost when you talk of some of those stuff. But at the end of the day, what people do expect, what traders or transporters do fear about, is losing business opportunities. We are talking about new solutions. Decarbonizing the transport sector means primarily using or reducing dependence on the fossil fuel. But we do have countries whose wealth is based on that. We do have people whose businesses is just to transport our cargo here and there. How workers into those sectors? That is why I said in my thinking is, how can we do the most inclusive businesses, sustainable businesses, and why do we still achieve those objectives? And then I developed a simple example from my country, my experience, and I believe it can also help others. 5 years back, I was in Geneva at the UNCTAD meetings. I served as a CEO of one of the most advanced corridors in Africa, the Central Corridor, starting from the port of Dar es Salaam, Tanzania, going into DRC, Burundi, Rwanda, Uganda, and now Malawi and Zambia had joined. So now this makes a family of 7 countries. And then when I was invited to speak, I think the issue was around how do we undertake a proper communication to the road users, that now we need to embark on a model shift, like depending less on road and fuel, but embarking on railway, standard gauge railway, electric, and railway, which are less fuel consuming. And there was, of course, and it still faces some fears that we build the roads, and if we shift to railways, those who have got vested interest in those sectors would oppose or would reduce the speed at which countries are moving. And then I came to a conclusion that, look, at the end of the day, it is about business. If we depend less on roads and invest in railways, the transportation cost will be reduced. Of course, from the beginning 500 kilometers from the seaports. A return trip makes 3,000 kilometers. And 3,000 kilometers from Kenya, from Dar es Salaam going to Congo, Burundi, Rwanda, and the like. You will spend $160 to $200 to bring 1 ton, just transportation cost. $200 per ton. And you are carrying 1 million tons per year. You can just compute, it's a huge money. But when we go for the railway, the modern one that we are building in the region, the 200 ton dollars per ton, rather, like when you're going to Congo, will be reduced to nearly $50, $70. So we are nearly losing more than half of the budget into the transport sector because the reliance on the road transport is so costly. 5 years later, and this is today, at the COP29, we are again here, and I'm delighted that our countries walked the talk. As you are aware, the standard gauge railway is under development in Tanzania, in Burundi, Congo, and other countries in the Central Corridor member states. In Tanzania alone, they want to spend more than $10 billion. And in Burundi, we are getting ready to spend $1 billion. Or the contracting processes are almost done, and the works should be starting soon. Of course, the challenge is there is how can we bridge the financing gap? We have been looking into existing financing solutions, the traditional ones, working with our traditional partners like the African Development Bank and other banks in the region and other financing partners. But as we are looking at how can we bridge the financing gap, I believe the climate finance solutions can only be welcomed. That's why a while ago I stood up and immediately my business card with my sister over there. We have been working with GIZ and actually trying to see how these countries getting hard to get this sustainable infrastructure, the standard gauge railway could, tap into existing financing mechanisms. Now, I keep recalling what I said earlier on that how can we now proper sustainable business inclusive and everyone gets the deal, get the expected results. We would not wish to kick some people out from these businesses because they will only slow down our journey towards reaching these objectives. I've got some few numbers here. They are not quite many, but I just wanted to share with them with you. One trend, once this railway will be ready, by the way, in Tanzania, they already completed the Tanzania to Dodoma section, nearly 400 kilometers. Now the train, the standard gauge is running, and now construction is coming to Burundi border and the DRC border. One train can bring as much as the cargo that can be brought by 50 trucks. One train equals 50 trucks. When you have 50 trucks on a road, you can imagine, and I come back to this. Now, with a cargo of 10 million tons, when you have 10 million tons on your corridor, you need 400,000 trucks. 400,000 trucks. Or 8,000 trains. These 400,000 trucks consume nearly 600 million liters of fuel. This translates into 600 million US dollars for only 10 million tons. Burundi is not that big as Tanzania in the SDFC, but coming to our story as a country, we do spend every year or consume for only the international transport 60 million US dollars, 60 million liters of fuel. Over 10 years, this will be 60 times 10, 600 million liters, 600 million US dollars. But as cargo keeps increasing every year, in the next 10 years, if we do nothing, we shall spend nearly $1 billion US dollars, or nearly $1 billion liters of fuel for only a single country like Burundi. Now I ask my question, even if I have this money, I can spend and get the deal, but is this sustainable? No. The damage on the road is drastic. The uncompetitiveness of these modes can already get my economy to be competitive on international markets. Even the countries exporting to my country will not get their deals competitive. Now what's the solution? The solution is to embark on what I could call an invest substitution solutions, on a financing substitution solutions. And that's why in my conversation I welcome very well and warmly some of the solutions FW, UK, Japan, African Development Bank, World Bank, and other Arab development banks are doing. We are having a conversation, and very soon we'll start works, because contracting, procurement is almost done. But my call is for you guys to have a conversation with us on how we can bridge this financing gap while we all do business. And I think the message here is that these platforms should not be like places where people come to complain. I hear a lot of complaints, people complaining. We do understand there is no one size fits all. There is no silver solutions in the world, never. We are ready to customize some of these solutions. If I don't do this, I won't be sustainable. Even if some people are making business out of this is not going to be sustainable. We are ready as a country to partner totally with you, and please let us sit together. I'm happy my sister offered me an opportunity, and again sits together with GIZ, because there is a conversation, an ongoing conversation within the Central Corridor member states, Burundi included, on how the countries investing in standard gauge railway could tap into climate finance that may be available, so that we invest in non-polluting solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Minister, really also setting the scene, but also highlighting also the importance of also the freight sector as well as the passenger sector, and also the need really of a just transition. Again, also thanks to all the speakers and all presenters